Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Spooky Sunday. Today, I have three videos for you from Mama Arts, and let's get into it. First one, Playhouse. Also, don't know if you can see it, but on my whiteboard in the back over here, I'll make the lights so you can see it. We got a ranking from 1 to 3 for the three videos, and on a scale of 1 to 10 for each of them. After each video, I'm going to put my rating for it, and I want you to put your ratings of each video in the comment section. Alright, let's get everything back to red, and let's go. Number 1, the Playhouse.
We live on several acres in rural Indiana, USA. Our neighbors aren't too far apart, but we all live on a lot of property. On our properties, we have a lot of trees, and our neighbor doesn't maintain their property well, so a lot of it's overgrown. You know, a couple of fallen trees and a lot of downed branches. We knew the state of their property was probably because it was an older couple that owned the house and the property was vast. We have a creek separating our homes as well, but a small strip of their property is accessible from our backyard. Due to the overgrowth in trees, we weren't able to see much of their property when we first moved in the summer, and of course, we didn't go onto their land because we didn't want to trespass. One night, my daughter and her friend were camping in the backyard and ran inside, swearing that they heard a kid laughing or crying in our backyard.
That's not
I
creepy at all.
figured it was their imagination from too many scary stories while in the tent, but went out to investigate briefly just in case. I heard a faint noise coming from just beyond our property line. I moved the flashlight into the general direction and called out to whoever may be in the trees. The sound stopped. I decided it was probably just a couple of stray cats, but just
No, it's not stray cats. Why would you investigate it at night?
in case, I had the girls set up the tent in the living room. The next day, after taking my daughter's friend home, curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to investigate the area by our property line. As I neared the line of trees, I saw a small path I had never noticed before. Since I knew my neighbors were too far and the trees were too thick, they couldn't see me on their property, so I stepped onto the small path. I walked slowly, looking down, watching for poison ivy and fallen branches. I wasn't too far in when I saw a dirty, broken kid's toy on the ground, wrapped in overgrown weeds. I looked up, and in the distance I saw a small, white shed-like structure. As I got closer, there were more and more toys scattered on the ground,
What's the
some
barbed wire
partially
everywhere?
buried, all broken and dirty. Then there was barbed wire, and I could see the front of the shed and realized it was a large playhouse with a wooden alphabet decorating the outside. I was starting to feel uneasy. This playhouse was at least half a mile or more from the only house on the property. I stopped in my tracks, letting my imagination go a little, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I must have jumped a foot off the ground, only to turn around and see that my daughter had followed me. Once my heart slowed down, I decided to get a closer look. There was more broken barbed wire fencing on the ground the closer we got. The window on the side was broken, and there was a hole in the roof. There was a broken train set, one a kid would be able to ride on. The front door had a white piece of wood set to lock someone in, not keep people out.
What?
At this point, my daughter was in full panic mode and begging for us to walk back to our
Listen
house.
to your daughter.
But I had to at least look through the window, or my
No!
mind would wander with all the possibilities of what could be in there.
Then let your mind wander
As I
or
was stepping to the
contact the
side of the
police.
shed, my daughter was following close behind. In her fear, she was paying more attention to me than where she was stepping, and she cut her leg pretty deep on some barbed wire that was hidden in
Ow.
overgrowth. I quickly glanced inside the window, only to see a partially dirt floor and broken wood, and a large wooden bench with a dark stain on top. I picked up my daughter, who was determined her leg was going to fall off. We left the neighbor's property, and I took her to the doctor to get a tetanus shot and get her clean.
What? Getting a tetanus shot? That barbed wire's not rusted whatsoever.
To get a tetanus shot and get her cleaned up. That night after dinner, I let the dog out, but couldn't get her to come back in. I let her stay outside for a while and checked again a little later. Our dog still wouldn't come in, and I noticed she was standing by the path we took earlier. I grabbed a flashlight and her leash and headed out to her. She was pacing, whining, and sniffing around everywhere. I figured it was from the blood earlier, but she never ventured onto the path. Then, I heard the giggling of a little girl. I called out to the child, but there was no answer in return, just some rustling in the leaves. I ran inside with the dog to check on my daughter to make sure that she was still in the house. She was laying in bed, fast asleep. The next morning, I went straight to the playhouse, but as I was approaching, something was wrong. The broken toys seemed to be in different places, and when I got to the playhouse, my heart felt like it was a ton of bricks. All over the side of the playhouse were children's drawings in my daughter's blood.
Oh! Dear God. Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to have to give that an 8. Specifically because it's leaving us off on a cliffhanger. Anyway, moving on to the second one. Let's see if this one's slightly better.
Llama sale! Llama sale! We've got big llamas, little llamas. What about medium-sized llamas? No, we don't have those. And llamas on hoodies, all 15% off until midnight on the 15th. The link is in the description. Now, back to the video.
Go buy their merch.
My parents were traveling for the weekend, as it was their anniversary, and to no surprise, they wanted to be alone.
Makes sense.
This meant that I had to take care and be in charge of my little brother, Oliver. Our home and neighborhood were surrounded by woods, and Ollie liked ambling around the trail that was behind our house, but he couldn't go back there without permission. So naturally, since I
just me, or do little siblings think when you're placed in charge they don't have to listen to you whatsoever? And like if they do something that you told them not to do and they know they're not supposed to do, then you're the one that takes the blame for it. It's interesting.
I was 18 and he was 10, I'd have to go with him for precautionary purposes. It was a little while before lunch, so I decided to join Ollie in his trek, so that way my appetite would be in a more salubrious state. It was spring, and the leaves were meager and just starting to grow back onto the trees, which also meant I had to watch out for any sort of dangerous animals that could possibly lurk out and cause harm to any of us. I could hear Ollie sniffing the air, and then him groaning at something. "Something smells like shit," he said nasally, as he pinched his nostrils shut. "Hey, watch your mouth," I retorted, surprised by the sudden curse. "Just because Mom and Dad aren't here doesn't mean you're allowed to say whatever." I did, however, sniff the air. He was right. There was a smell of rotten meat that permeated my nose. It was like roadkill. I saw what looked like legs by a tree about several yards from us.
But she dared
Stay
to
right
look.
there, okay?
Why are you going to look?
He nodded in agreement while keeping his hand on his nose. I leisurely walked forward and turned the tree to see what the thing was. It was a deer, and it was dead all right. Flies droned and swarmed around it. I was used to seeing dead animals around here. Hunting was pretty frequent. But there was something that rather took me aback. It was the fact that the way its neck had been ravaged into. It was almost entirely gone and torn down to the bone. A bear would go down to the muscle and stop there. But to the bone? This had to have been from something much more vicious. But what? I looked back to see if Ollie had actually done what I urged him to. He did, but he was peering out to the woods. His eyes, so fixated, were filled with concern and his face unnerved. "You okay, bud?" I asked, noticing his expression. "Something's out there," he murmured
No,
as he
really?
continued to seem alarmed. I looked to see if he was kidding around. All that was in my view were the trees and brush. It might have been a deer or something. "Don't worry so much. Come on, let's go back and get some lunch." And so we
Good
did,
call.
just to reassure him. I made ourselves some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches as we watched a movie for a bit.
That's some purple jelly.
Ollie usually liked his sandwiches, and he'd been done with it in a few.
Bruh. This looks like he literally just got out of work. And he doesn't care enough to make actual... Bruh. Why does the kid look like he just got off of work? Oh, now...
few minutes, but he ate his so sluggishly. I didn't bother asking what he saw, because I figured that he must have scared himself, and that he'd get over it in a while.
No.
However, the back of my mind was still unsettled by that deer. How could its neck have been mutilated like that to such a grisly state? Night dawned upon both of us, and Ollie was begging me to let him sleep beside me as I put him to bed. "What's gotten into you?" I asked him. "That thing's still out there. It was staring at me. It was dark and big. Bigger than you. I'm sure you just scared yourself. If anything was out there, it wasn't anything dangerous." He continued to beg me, but I kept refusing, and told him to close his eyes and that he'd forget about it in the morning. I laid down in my bed, ready for a good rest. I like keeping my TV on just so I have a source of light in my room. I felt my eyes starting to sag and get heavy as I slowly felt myself growing drowsy. There was a sudden snap from outside. It sounded like a stick being splintered. I figured it was some animal, like another deer, but what would be out at this time of night? My TV was still on, so I decided to watch a little bit more, just so I could go back to sleep. Without even thinking, my gaze floated to the window, and my heart punched the inside of my chest. There was something at the window. I couldn't see what it was, save for the eyes. They were milky and opaque, almost lifeless, but they were staring right through me. I tried to make it seem like I didn't see the figure outside, and just roll over onto my stomach and pretend to be asleep to try and avert it. I then heard something against the glass. The thing was scratching my window. The sound was piercing my ears and grated at my nerves. My chest started to feel full as my breath started to shorten. My window was starting to open, and I could hear that thing climbing into my room. Its presence was clearly made, as its shadow covered my entire bed in black. I sat there hyperventilating for what seemed like hours, until I felt the mattress start to sink in. The springs groaned as the thing had climbed onto the bed. I felt I could literally die from fright right there. The thing started to move across my bed. I was trying my best not to breathe so hard, but I was completely terror-stricken. It then stopped and stood right at my shoulders. I felt its giant feet clasping onto my shoulder blades. I could hardly breathe. I had a mirror to my right that allowed me to see what was above me, and chills ran down my spine. The creature was black, large, and at least 7 feet tall and lanky. Its arms went down to its calves. Its chest leaned over me and stretched to an impossible degree. It didn't even look human or animal. It seemed alien. I shut my eyes tight, hoping that it was just some dream. I could start to hear the creature's heavy breaths and growling. It sounded like a dog,
It's a demon.
much more disturbing. As it grasped harder, I feared the worst. My ears were ringing. I wasn't breathing while I bit my tongue. My eyes were shut so tight, and the blood flow in my head stopped almost completely. Something then beckoned it off of me, and the creature leapt off. Through my ringing ears, I thought I could hear something like thumps and rusty hinges. I painfully felt the blood flow starting to come back, and I blacked out. Morning came and I had a massive headache now, and my
Makes
chest
sense.
felt so tight. I needed to go wake up Ollie and make breakfast,
I see.
and I reluctantly did so. I went into his room but found his bed empty. I checked all of downstairs to check if he was there somewhere. Nothing. I then thought of the one place he could definitely be if he was hiding. I went outside and took to the path in the back of the woods. I walked some ways while trying to get over the pain in my head when I saw his bare feet by the tree. "Ollie," I said, exhausted and annoyed in my grimace. "Come on, what are you—" I stopped. I felt my whole entire world collapse as I was bludgeoned with every single negative emotion possible. I put two and two together, and it answered my questions as it brought my distress up tenfold. Ollie was sitting there. His skin was pale. His cloudy eyes trickled with blood, and his neck was mangled to the bone. He was dead. He wasn't lying. That creature was still out there.
Well, we're just gonna put that at 12 out of 10. And probably a change of pants later. Ooh. That was creepy. Moving on to the third and final one.
I'm not making this video for attention, or sympathy, or anything. I just want anyone who can help me to do that. My name's Daniel, and this is a story I wish I didn't have to tell. I've been a night owl my entire life. As a teen, I used to stay up way past midnight every night, watching terrifying videos on YouTube. I know now they were nothing compared to the horrors of the real world.
Does anyone know that one guy that's like number 15? This is the Burger King foot lettuce meme. Hang on. Hang on, let's see. Hang on.
Number 15, Burger King foot lettuce. The last thing you'd want in your Burger King burger is someone's foot fungus, but as it turns out, that might be what you get. A 4chaner uploaded a photo anonymously to the site showcasing his feet in a plastic bin of lettuce with the statement, "This is the lettuce you eat at Burger King."
That's exactly what this is. I'm not gonna play it all because I know how annoying his voice is.
Nothing compared to the tragedy my family and I went through. The story I'm gonna tell to you now. My parents, being teachers, had always emphasized the importance of sleeping well to me and would definitely disapprove of my late night routine. So I knew that if they'd caught me up at that time, I'd be in big trouble.
Yeah.
At first, this wasn't a problem, but after I told them about a child predator in our neighborhood that I'd seen in one of my videos, they seemed to grow more and more paranoid, which was obviously understandable. Every night, I'd hear one of them wandering into my room, checking on me, and every night, I'd immediately turn off my light and pretend to be asleep.
You have on a lamp. Hang on. you have on a lamp while scrolling on your phone. No, you turn down your phone's brightness, you stare at that, you don't need a lamp! That's just gonna draw attention and make light illume from the cracks at the top and underneath your door, therefore signaling you are awake. If you do that and point it away from the door, you are safe. Don't ask how I know this, I've used it twice.
I never knew for sure if it was
Maybe
my
more.
mom or dad coming in, since obviously if I opened my eyes to see, they'd know I was awake. Mostly, I presumed it was my dad, from the heavy-sounding footsteps, but either way,
Tells me that's
I
not
found it
your dad.
pretty hypocritical for them to preach to me about being up late when they were awake themselves. Sometimes I wondered if they knew I wasn't sleeping, because often it was only after what seemed like hours before they'd finally leave and go to check on Alfie. That's my little brother, and Lucy, my little sister. I'd have asked them about it, but I thought it would have confirmed any suspicions which they seemed to already have about my staying awake deep into the mornings of the next day. Like I said, I guess they were just paranoid about the child predator.
Fun fact, I accidentally. So I got in bed, and I'm like, I'm just gonna watch a couple TikToks before I go to bed. I accidentally stayed up till 2 in the morning watching TikToks. Like, that wasn't my plan at all. It was to watch TikToks for 30 minutes and go to bed. No, I got stuck in that scroll.
It was stupid for me to presume any of these things, and I'll never forgive myself for it, but I did it all the same. Anyway, one day, Lucy's school, where my parents both work, announced a school trip. It meant they'd be gone at some point next month from Saturday morning to Sunday morning, and it meant that I'd finally get to watch the horror movie my friend had lent me, that my parents had refused to let me watch. There was one downside, though. I'd be left to look after Alfie. He, being only 6 years old, my mom was reluctant to leave him in my care alone, but my dad defended me, reminding her that Alfie had been up most of the night after a nightmare, so he'd probably sleep most of the day anyway. Besides, he reassured her, he's 17. He can be given a little responsibility. With a heavy heart, my mom agreed. I honestly wish she hadn't. Finally, the morning came for them to head off. It took longer than expected because my sister said some of her favorite toy dolls had been stolen, but eventually my mom persuaded her that they were probably just lost and told me to look for them whilst they were gone. I begrudgingly agreed.
I know that you
Soon they
didn't.
were ready to go. As they were leaving, my mom gave me a stern word, reminding me to lock the doors, not go to bed too late, and take good care of Alfie. She told me she'd be watching through the security cameras to make sure I was looking after him properly. I told her she really didn't have to worry. Then we said our goodbyes, and they were off. Alfie and I spent most of the day playing outside, but came in after the frisbee landed near a strange man who Alfie said had been in his nightmare.
What?
I told him that was ridiculous, because even if he somehow was in his dream, he wouldn't be able to remember. Anyway, I went by myself to get it, and I have to admit that the man was fairly creepy. He had a huge grin, and his eyes staring right at me.
The smiling man?
Permanently forced further open than they were designed to go. His clothes all seemed to have been made from someone 50 years younger, as they struggled to cling to his fully grown body.
The smiling man from Wish?
It was cold, but he was wearing a sun hat, a tiny one for children, which barely fit on his head. I recognized it, but didn't know how at the time. If I'd learned anything from the videos I spent my nights watching, I'd have abandoned the frisbee and left. But clearly I didn't, because not wanting to feel like a baby, I approached him.
Oh, it's the child
As I
predator.
got closer to the man, his smile disappeared, and he removed the hat and held it behind his back.
What?
I began to see his features in greater detail. He looked tired. He was pale, and his eyes were bloodshot and had huge gaping bags under them. In the entire time it took me to get to him, the man didn't move an inch. Other than the odd blink, not even his eyes shifted. At this stage, I was getting uneasy. I just wanted to get it and leave. Hi, can I have my frisbee back, please? Thanks. The thought of that conversation, if you can even call it a conversation, still makes me shiver. I locked the front door as soon as we got home. We were both a bit shaken, and Alfie looked tired, so I gave him some more food and put him to bed. It took him about 2 hours to fall asleep. He kept complaining that he'd have another nightmare about that man. I told him he wouldn't, but he wasn't convinced.
He shouldn't
I
be.
see him every night.
He whispered to me,
What?
"Well, if you see him again, don't worry, I'll be here to fight him off." This seemed to settle him down, and soon he was fast asleep. At about 11, it was time to put my film on. I couldn't have my mom knowing that I was watching it, so I did something naive and ignorant, and something I'll always regret.
Unplug that camera.
I turned off the security cameras. I watched it for 2 hours straight, my eyes never straying from the screen, until I replayed the last few seconds of the film, but the sound didn't happen again. It was coming from inside my house. Alfie? He didn't reply, but I could see him under the covers, so I thought he was just asleep, and I didn't want to wake him up. I swear, if I thought anything worse had happened, I'd have checked. You okay? I thought maybe I was just worrying too much, hearing things.
What?
It was late, and the film had been scary. Maybe it was just all in my head. I knew from the sound of his voice it was him. Alfie! Alfie? Usually this much noise would have woken him up. Alfie, what's going on?
Something tells me he's
Something was
gone.
wrong. It was him. The doll. I couldn't believe it. It had to be some kind of sick prank. It had to be.
No.
But it wasn't. It was the man I'd spoken to earlier. He'd taken my brother. Alfie! I was certain they'd be gone before I could reach them. But he didn't set off straight away. He watched as I tried helplessly to do something. I screamed and
Punch
I
the
shouted,
glass.
and I banged on the windows, and I tried to open the doors. But nothing worked.
You better grab onto that
It was
car.
all in vain. There was nothing I could do for my brother.
Yes, there was! You could break the windows with something. You could have gotten a license plate. You could have taken videos or pictures of their face. You could have done a whole lot, and yet you sat there and went, no, don't take him, when it should have been, let me try to break the window.
My brother, my best friend, as he was stolen away from me. It was too late for the police to do anything. It was too late for anybody to do anything. He was gone, and in time, I'd have to come to accept that.
You have 9 new messages. First message.
Hello? If you're out with Alfie, call me back when you get back in, please. Love you guys. Bye.
End of message. Second message.
Daniel, we've been trying to get a hold of you for hours. Is everything alright? Did you turn the security cameras off?
They'll be fine. The security system probably just glitched out. Hey, Alfie, just call us as soon as you can, okay? You know how Mom worries.
End of message. Third message.
Listen, Daniel, we're starting to get really worried now. If you don't pick up, one of us is gonna have to come home to check if everything's okay. Please pick up.
End of message. Fourth.
Daniel, are you okay? Daniel! What's happened? Please answer! I couldn't bear to tell them anything. That was 7 years ago. We never found him. When I asked my parents if they'd seen anything at all of this man whilst they checked on us during the night, they only looked at me, concerned and confused. What do you mean? They asked. I could only stare at them in horror. Every night, around 2, you'd come and check on Alfie, Lucy, and me to see if we were sleeping.
Daniel?
They told me.
No, we didn't.
The police wanted security camera footage of the man, but of course, there wasn't any. It automatically deletes any footage older than 24 hours, which meant I'd been mindless enough to stop it recording on the only night we could have seen him. You know, the strange thing is, I don't even know if I want Alfie to be alive. Because if he is, God knows what that monster has done to him. Sorry if I've gone on too long, but the guilt's been killing me. I had to get it out somehow. I only tell it as a story because, well, people like stories, and I want as many people to hear this as possible. Alfie, if somehow you're watching, I love you, and I'm so sorry. Please don't lose hope. And to the man who took you, it's not too late. If you have any heart at all, and even if you don't, please let my little brother come home. To everybody else, if someone comes into your bedroom at night, open your eyes. You never know who it might be. I still stay up late at night. But it's not because I don't want to sleep. It's because I can't. In case anyone sees Alfie, this is the last good photo we took of him. That's it. Stay safe. Thank you.
For how real that story is and how often that would happen, I say the real horror is that story is most definitely true. So we're going to rank that one above the last one. And, well, I hope you all have enjoyed the show. Make sure to go check out the TikTok. That's info.tv13. And we got a podcast, The Info Show. And if you're not subscribed, please do. And without further ado, I'm going to let you all go. Goodbye.